I thought I would make a video to help people to understand the difference between a stitch file and a vector file. A stitch file is a file that you have open in Embird editor, and a vector file is a file that you have open in Studio, and it's a vector file, and all the objects are vector objects in Studio, and you can resize them any size you want. However, here in Embird Editor, a stitch file, you have to be really careful about resizing. You can move stitch points, and there are a few things that you can do. So I'll first start with an example of a stitch file. Say something that you bought. Usually people will buy, a PES for their Brother machine or a Jeff for their Janome machine or what have you. So I'll go ahead and I'll just open up a PES file. So I'll go to File, Open. This is a stitch file. I'm not even sure where I got this file, but it's a PES. And I'll just click OK. And it's in normal view. I'll go into 3D, and you can see that here are all our objects, our colors, and if you look down in the item window, you'll see all the stitches that comprise this design. And so you can edit these stitch points a couple different ways. One thing I noticed right off the bat is, this is what I love about Embird. When you're in this true view, this 3D true view, this is how it's going to stitch out. It's going to stitch here, and let's see, that yellow object highlighted in red. Okay. So here it is down here. This is going to stitch all in one pass. So this long length, a lot of times these files come through like this and you're like, what? Did the digitizer really mean to do that? Shouldn't there be a tie off here? And there might be. You can zoom in and you can kind of see, that it does look like there might be a tiny stitch point there and there. And if you go into Stitches View, and with it selected, if you click on Points Editing Mode, you don't have to draw a box around it, but they're all selected, all the white or the off-white ones. So you do have to click outside. But then, if you notice, there's 3 points here, which is the one that goes down to there, and is this really a tie-off? So you can just like click on one of them, and I'm at 5916. So, and if you recall, let me just select the item again. It started at 5797, this whole beige object, or this beige item, the one with the leaves that are all attached. So anyways, we're kind of in the vicinity. So you hit on Points Editing Mode. You can click outside and then click one of them. You can try to hold down Shift and then hit Tab to go backwards. So Shift, Tab. I'm holding down my Shift button and just hitting Tab. I mean, that did look like a tie-up, so now I'm holding Shift and I'm hitting Tab again. Now it looks like it's doing like a triple beam. you know, that's basically what this design is a triple beam. So I'm going backwards. So I'll just go forwards now, tab, tab. That's what a triple beam does. Forward, back, forward, and then the next one. Forward, oh, back. Okay. Now it looks like we're doing a tie-off. But that wasn't really much of a tie-off, but it was part of that triple beam. Now let's see down here if it ties on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it did look like it's tying on. So it probably was tying off. So this here was supposed to be a dotted line. It's supposed to be a jump. And, you know, my machine will trim jumps if I let it. But the way this design is registering, there's no jump. This line is just part of this whole red highlighted, you know, there's no jump. So my machine is going to just, it'll tie off like it looks like it tied off, and it'll tie on, but after it ties off, it's just going to drag the thread and then come over here and tie on. Now, a lot of people like that because with something this thin, they don't want it to start a tie on and possibly have a bird's nest because their thread came out of the needle. You know, this is such a thin triple beam design, you know. So it's probably fine. And I'm sure from here to here is probably the same thing. But if you want to make sure, you can just turn this into a jump and then you'll know it's a jump. You could add tie-offs and tie-ons if you want. You might add too much bulk, but you know, if you want your machine to actually trim it, if you trust your machine to make a good tie-on and you do want it to trim it and your machine can trim jumps, then you will want to give this a jump code. Now, our Genomes and Brothers don't read trim codes, but they'll read a jump. The multi-needle ones will. The single needle ones won't. They'll only read a color change if you want it to trim. So we'll go ahead and turn them into a jump just for the heck of it. I probably wouldn't let my machine trim this jump anyways. In fact, I have my machine to never trim jumps just because, you know, I do a lot of working with leather and I like to trim them myself, and I just don't. It's hard on the machine and so on. But just for the sake of this exercise, I'll turn these into jumps. So there's several ways you can do it. The easiest way is to separate this item as its own object and then do insert codes. So the first thing we do is we right click, separate item. So here it is. It's its own object now. So this one item is what comprises this object now. It used to be that this one item was part of another larger object. This one. So at any rate, now it's its own object. So we can right click, insert remove codes, and you want to check remove all running stitches and replace them with floating or jumps if that running stitch is longer than, and then you give it a length. So we check it. I mean, it's not going to affect the rest of your design because we only have this object selected. So I'll just leave it at 5 because I know this is probably longer than 5 because this grid is 0 to 10 is 10 mils. So this is probably about 8, 7 or 8, something. So if anything is longer than 5, it'll be replaced with a jump. And this is longer than 5, so it'll be replaced with a jump. And you don't have to worry about, inserting trimming codes or anything because you probably have a Janome or a brother who doesn't read them anyways. And especially if you're a beginner, we don't want to start inserting trimming codes. Even though they're nice for us to see, you'll see a little scissor. A lot of times we assume that we can cut those then. And we're still not sure with this design if these are good tie-offs. So I'm not even going to mess with that. And like I said, your machine probably doesn't recognize a trim code anyways. And I'll get into those later probably, but we'll just leave it as replacing this with a floating if it's longer than 5 mils. And there it is. So you've got your dotted lines. So these are floating stitches or jumps, and you can see they all showed up down here because they weren't there before. If I click undo, you could see it was just one item. Everything was connected, but if I hit redo, you can see that, jumps in red, there's a dotted jump, there's a dotted jump, and there, and there. Now, if you're worried that, say you're like me and you're really not going to have your machine trim these jumps anyways, you're going to trim them, but you're still worried that there were not tie-offs here because we don't know for sure. That did look like there was a tie-off and a tie-on, but you can always add a couple more. And since we're not sure and since it kind of looked like there were, I'll only add like 2 tie-on, tie-off stitches. You can do 2, 4, whatever. So I'll have this object selected. So all of these will be selected, even though it just looks like that one is, or whatever, These items are all in this object. So I'll right click and I'll do insert tie-on off stitches. So it's going to insert tie-ons and tie-offs. And I'll just do 2, like I said, since we're kind of sure and we don't want to make it too bulky. And I'll click OK. And so you could see it did get a little bulkier there. If you click on here and you see that it's stitching number 1 through number 63, well, that's the one below. That's this one. And then it jumps, there's your jump, and then stitch number 65 is where it's going to tie on. So if you want to see that, then you'll want to either put it in up here or in your stitch locator. I'll just do, say, 65 through 67, and then I'll hit points editing mode. And those 3 are selected. So if I zoom in, they're still selected because I'm on my magnifier. If I click points editing mode and just tap, so just these 3 are selected. So when I click on one, you can see that's 66. So if I hit Shift Tab, that was 65. So remember I only added 2 tie-offs. So 65, and I'll hit Tab, 66, 67. So that's it for my tie-on. 68. Now it looks like it's making the triple beam. 69. So that kind of makes me think that I should have done 4 because that's not much of a tie-on. I mean, yes, it's a triple bean, so it's coming down. You know, that's really kind of just part of the design. So I really think I'm going to make it 4. Sorry, I haven't worked on this. Obviously, I've never stitched this. So I'm going to undo, and you can see my jump is still there. Let me hit points editing mode to make sure I undid it all the way. So those are gone. So I'm going to right click and right click, insert tie on tie off, and I will do 4. And there you go. So you can see it did make more. It made like a triangle tie off. That's why it's always set to 4. That's really the best. So now, if I click on it, and my first set of stitches, like I said before, were down here. My second set were up here. They start at 69. So I can actually just go like 69 to 70, hit points editing mode, magnify, zoom in. When you use your magnifier, you don't have to worry about, you know, nothing's going to happen, no stitches are going to move, and then I'll just hit my points editing mode. And I can see my arrows going that way, so I'm thinking, yeah, this is 69. So then I'll hit tab, tab, and then it goes into the design. So that's a better tie-on. And then if I click over here, when it ties off, so this stitches for 67, and then it jumps. So here's the jump now. Stitches this, and then it jumps. But when it jumps, that's stitch number 136. So you know stitch number 135 was the last stitch of this design. So you can put 134 to 135 up here and hit your points editing mode. Magnify, zoom in. Arrow, you can see the arrows going downward. Click on points editing mode. So that's 134. I'm going to do shift tab. Just see what kind of tie off I have. So there's 130, 129, 130, 131, 132. Now it's going to start tying off. 33, 34, 35, and now it's going to jump. So I'm happier with that now. That makes me feel better. Even though I'm not going to set my machine to trim, or I'm going to set my machine to not trim jumps. So now with all that said, oh look, I forgot about this one. I'll show you another thing you can do with this one. With these, since they're, you know, I'm going to trim these and this and that, I would probably tuck them in a little bit under the stem, but to do that, they have to be separate objects. Right now, they're just items, so you have to right click, separate all items, and then, you know, I usually don't zoom in using that, and then you can move them. Select, and I would probably move them up in the order as well. So I have one selected, hold shift, select the other ones. This is editor. Just left click and drag. Oh, it's not going to work because they're not all joined. I'll have to unjoin them. I could just move this one down, but I'll just do that. Insert after. So at any rate, I would take every one and I would slide it in just a little bit under so it looks more natural. And it's going to be really tough stitching this design because, you know, it's so thin. And to get this perfect, you really have to have it stabilized well. With all that said, on this design, I probably, let me select these all and join them. I probably would have just, and I'll show you on this one how I really would do it. I want to select this object and try to find these leaves. They're probably down here. Yeah. So the same thing, they're all connected. But here's how I really would address this whole design. I would separate this so that I could work with it so it becomes an object. And I would give it a stitch length for the outlines and underlays. Actually, though, I might mess up the triple beam, you know, because these are already done. But, you know, if I were going to do them all this way, it wouldn't matter. But at any rate, there's so many ways to do it. I would right-click, set density or pattern. Now, these are just outlines, so the original fill and stitch density and that shouldn't get affected because I'm only going to work on outlines and underlays. And I'm going to specify them as like 2.5 in length because this is too long. We need a stitch point in there. We can insert it manually or we could do it this way. If you do it this way, I think it's going to affect this. And you know, up on the curve, you want them to be real small. So let's just see. So I want the outlines to be 2.5, so I get a stitch point there. So it doesn't look like it affected this up here, but it did give me 2 stitch points here, which is what I wanted. And so now I can select the item like I have been and go into stitches mode. And since the item is selected, when I select points editing mode, everything is selected. I'll just click outside and then tap this, and I would just bury it under the pink. Now, if the curve was, if it wasn't working out that great, with Studio, you have to be behind the arrow to insert. So I'll just put this one way down here, right click, insert. So this is the manual way I could have done it, but you know, so many different ways to do this. Insert. So now it should bury underneath. You may have an issue of looping if you know, if the pink stitch points are landing where these are. I mean, you could really be OCD about this. Oh, and then this one would have to be moved up in the order. Oops, editor. So left click and drag, insert before. And so now it's underneath. So we could go and kind of see if we can see where the pink stitches are by, we can click on points editing mode and the white ones were still selected, but we can select them all and see, you know, I mean, it's hard to see. So there's my white one. Doesn't seem to be in the way, but there looks like there's a pink one there and so on. So, you know, it isn't a perfect science, but you know, we're an editor, and so we're editing stitch points of a purchased design or one that you got for free. And so this is how you want to do it. So, but here's the other thing that I did forget. Um, since these are connected, like how these I moved them because they were all separate objects, these are connected, so you see this, you know, it's not tucked in like it was before, but you can tuck it in. This stitch point here. So the pink ones aren't selected because I had this selected and the item one selected. And so when the item is selected, and if I go to points editing mode, only those are selected. So even if I click outside, those are the only ones that are going to move. So, I mean, I could click this point right here, this stitch point, and I could right click and I could split it right there just so that I could click on this one now. So now here's this object here, just so that I could select all of its stitches, hit points editing mode, and that one doesn't get selected though. I forgot. Let me click and then now you can see it underneath there, but the pink one's got selected too, but I can still get it and move it out. And I actually, if I knew what it was, and it is stitch number 1, obviously, because I split it, so it is stitch number 1, I could have just did it that way. So, God, I am so sorry. There are so many ways to do this. This program is amazingly powerful. So if I did split it, and if I have it selected, I see it starts at stitch number 1 through 61. If I just wanted stitch number 1, I do have to click 1 through 2. So I have it selected here. I know it starts with stitch 1. And if I just want stitch 1 and 2, say, to highlight, I can just put it in up here, 1 through 2, hit points editing mode. Now, these two are selected, which is weird. If I clicked on this one, and if I hit Shift Tab to go backwards, it does go to that one. That's your 1-to-1, which is weird. I don't know why it does that, but so then I can just delete that. And so then I can just click on this and I can move it now, and I can bury it underneath there. And this one, I could hide the pink just for a minute so that I could see if they're still attached. And then it doesn't look like they are, so let me just hit points editing mode. I mean, it's close enough, but if I was worried, I can, you know, take this one and put it right on top. So, I mean, that's a way to get them so that they're 3D. Bring back the pink so that it looks more natural behind the pink, like we did up there when we had the jumps. Obviously, that was easier, but it could be messier because of the jumps. Even though we're trimming them, it could have more bulk. This one will have less bulk. And then, you know, we could do the same thing here. But for the sake of not doing anymore, so if I take this object then and this object, and because by themselves you could see there's nothing after them because it's just the one object. And same thing with this one, but if you hold your control and join them, you still see nothing, and that's because they're connected. There's no jump. It's not like these. These here have all these jumps in between. You got that, then it ties off and then it jumps. And even though I'm not going to let my machine trim that jump, let me hide that. It doesn't show in Stitch's view, the jumps don't, because, you know, they're jumps and they think you're going to trim them. But in Stitch's view, it does. And what's nice about Embird is if you do go into 3D, you actually see what is actually going to stitch. You know, even though these are connection stitches, we call them, they are stitching. Yes, they're stitching behind the pink, but they are stitching. And so when you're in 3D view, you want to see exactly what's going to stitch. It's not like that in Hatch, and that's one thing that I've been asking for them to give me true view. If I'm going to click on true view or 3D, in Embird it's called 3D, I want to see what is actually going to stitch. No, I don't need to see the jumps where there's a tie off because I am going to be trimming those, but I do want to see these. And Hatch doesn't do that. The only way you could see these in Hatch is if you go into Stitch's view. And that makes no sense. It should show up in true view the way it's going to be. So I love that about Embird, that everything is just makes so much sense. But at any rate, so there you have it. Several different ways to get this looking good. Now these are stitch files, so if we did create this design in Embird Studio, meaning these would have been vector objects first in Studio, it would have been so much easier to edit them in Studio and then bring them here as stitch files. But we purchased this design, so this is all we can do. Now this one down here that's with the pink, let me just separate the pink, right click, separate color. So here's my pink, here's all the items that go with the pink. And let me just zoom out so I could see which ones I'm selecting. There's that one. I'm sure that's the top one. Okay, so this is, we have some more of the same issue going on with the outlines. This is the item where that's happening. And for the sake of just getting this done, I'm going to just do it manually. These are, okay, so that's that one. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and separate this just so that I can work on it. Okay, there it is up there. I'm going to zoom in to this. And I want to keep the pink there because I'm just going to insert nodes and move this up and leave these as connection stitches. So, but give them stitch points. So I'll just do it this quick way. So they are selected down here. You can see in red they're selected. So I can just click on points editing mode and then you can see them all selected. Yeah, but the problem is it is hard to see where they begin and end. So here's an arrow here. I could go ahead and see and so on, but I'm just going to click right here and I'm going to hit Shift Tab. So it looks like there's a tie off there. So, but it's going up that way and it looks like it's coming this way. So obviously I didn't click on the correct node. So let me click over here and let me hit tab. So that went right to here. So shift tab, I can insert. My arrow's going this way. I'm in front of my arrow. And I know you probably can't tell that these are highlighted, but they are. This one is not a great color, but so points editing mode, insert. So I'm just going to insert a few times. Probably too many. And I'll just move these up into place. Where I think they'll be hidden. You know, there might be a stitch point there. It looks like there might be. But I'm just going to wing it. Okay. And it looks like this one now, if I hit tab, it might be going up there. Okay, shift tab. So I was hitting tab, then shift tab, insert. I'll tell you what, it might have been quicker just to do this with the set density. But I only have one more left, so I could have just clicked on this. I don't want to mess up. I'll keep it in 3D. I didn't want to mess up with the triple beam, but it really didn't before. I'll just do right click, set density or pattern. Unless they already are 2.5, maybe they are. Maybe the stitch lengths are 2. Let me put it at 3.5 and see. Maybe they were 2.5. So the stitch length, so that I can get a stitch point here, I'll set it 3.5 this time. Oh yeah, see, it did change them. So Control Z. So they were at 2.5 probably. That's why they never changed, which is a common stitch length for triple beam. So set, I undid it. Set density or pattern. Do 2.5. And I'll click OK. Oh, it did change it again. I mean, they look fine. I mean, this is just the reflection, why that looks funny. I'll just leave it. And then my stitch points are in there. And I'll just, since it's selected, I'll just click on points editing mode and stitches view. And then I can just, whoa. Remember, they're all selected. When you have the item selected, you have to click once to unselect them. And there you go. So I am going to save this, edited. Okay. So that's what happens when, you know, you get somebody else's stitch file. You know, it can really confuse you. And now, to be honest, I mean, there are other things in this design that I don't like, but if I were to change anything else in it, you would have to get the permission of the digitizer. Like, you know, I don't like the fills inside here. So I would have to ask the digitizer, you know, can I change them? This looks like it was meant to be an applique, you know, with this leaf here not filled in and with this all empty. So I'd have to ask her if I could turn this into an applique, which is easy to do. Um, you can actually turn this into an applique just in Editor. You don't even need Studio by using the Insert Effect tools. There's so much more that I would do with this design, but I mean, as far as hiding the tie or the traveling stitches and the connection stitches and that I didn't change the design really. I just fixed, what somehow happened when the design got sent to me. Maybe the way she saved them or what have you. I had to fix those. So if I did have her permission to go ahead and change some of the fills and maybe make an applique out of it, here's what I would do. Like I don't like uh, the fill that's inside the hearts. So I already have them separated here. I separated them, you know, from the items. Uh, in the item window, I had separated them already. So, in fact, I can't remember if I did that on camera or off camera. Oh yeah, I did because I had to separate them to fix this. So the outlines are already separated. So all I have to do now is the object is selected. It's nice because they're all one item down here. And I'll just go to Insert, Effect. You want to do Cavity because you want to get this cavity that the outline is enclosing. And it's nice that it's all enclosed, so this will work. You want to uncheck Ignore Cavity, of course, because you want to include the cavity. You don't want to ignore it, you want it. So uncheck that. I do usually use random 1, and I keep my density a little looser than the default. And I'll put the full comp up to 0.2 since I have an outline here. I'm worried I might get a lot of pulling. So, and I'll click OK. And now you'll see, this one filled in, but it's okay because here's the object and here are the items in that object. And I just find the one, this one, and I just delete it. Right click, delete item. So it's gone. And, I don't need all these trims and whatnot, jumps. I'll just do it this way, delete, delete. Now it's nice when you do go ahead and it created this blue object here with all filled in with pretty stitches, and you see that there's a trim code and a jump code. Granted, your machine, if you have a Janome or a Brother, even a multi-needle, it's not going to recognize a trim code, but you may be able to set your machine to trim a jump code. If it sees a jump, my Janome 4 needle will trim jumps if I tell it to. And the Brothers do as well, the multi-needle Brothers. The single needles, no, you have to have a different color. So each one of these you'd have to set to a different color. But with all that said, and then Embird 2, you see this trim code here and this jump. Embird made the tie-offs and the tie-ons, and I'm not sure if it was like that in the previous version for our 2018 update, because I do remember there not being tie-offs when we did this insert effect, but now they're there. So I could be wrong, but I don't believe they were. But now they're there automatically. And just seeing this trim code is kind of neat. If you go into Stitches View, you can see all the scissors. And you could see your jumps too, you know, and you're like, well, where is this trim code? I don't see it highlighted. Well, you just click the jump that's affiliated with it, because that'll turn red. And then this will tell you this is where this trim code is, right before that jump. It's right before the jump. So that's where it's tying off. Where is this thing tying on? Well, you know, you go into your very first item, and of course we don't see the tie on here, but we can easily find it. There's two ways, there's really more than two, but there's two easy ways to find out where this begins. And we'll just start with using this up here. So we have our object selected. This is the item. We want to know where it starts because we want to see the tie-on. We want to make sure there's a tie-on. Whatever reason, it's stitch number 1 through whatever. We'll just go 1 through 5. So we have 1, and then in here we put 5, and we just hit enter, and it should be highlighted in red, but because there's so much going on here, I have this pink still on. Let me hide the pink. I do kind of see a little bit of red there now, and you know, I can zoom in. Okay, there I see it. And so it's highlighted in red, the 1 through 5, and when we click points editing mode, yeah, because it's blue, it's hard to see with the rest of the stitches. The rest of the stitches are whited out, and you know, I can zoom in. Yeah, I can see them now. I can make this a darker blue. Maybe I should have made it this gray background, but at any rate, we'll just click on one of them, and you can see, oh, I clicked on stitch 1. So I'm going to just hit tab. Oh, it went 6 to 7. So if that happens, just hit shift tab to get back to 1. And they were just on top of each other. So hold shift, tab, tab. You see I'm going 4, tab, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now I'm actually on 1. So I'll hit tab, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you could see that that's a good tie-on. So the other way to find out where your tie-on was or is would be you'd have it selected. Let me just click outside. Let me zoom out. Click outside to unselect everything. I will keep the pink. This is the pink that we didn't like, the inside pink that we didn't like. I could actually delete it now that I don't like it. And I've already saved this as edited. So let me just save it again. But at any rate, you have the blue selected. And, you know, I still have the 6 and 7 up here. So let me just get rid of those so that's not highlighted anymore. Okay, now the whole thing 1 through 198 for this item, and if I want to see where the tie-on is, here's the other way I could do it. Now here is a tip that is so weird, and I just, you know, found it by accident one day. If you want to use the stitch locator to find the beginning of this, don't use the magnifier first. Don't like click on the magnifier and think that you're going to put in stitch number 1, because guess what? When you put the magnifier on first and then do specify stitch number, it's going to zoom to stitch number 1 of your entire design, which it'll be stitch number 1 of this first object, because you have the magnifier selected first. And I'll show you. I had the magnifier selected. I did stitch locator. Stitch number 1, take my hands off the mouse and click enter, and it jumped way down here. And that's the beginning of this object here. But if I want to use the stitch locator, I'm going back to the blue, and I don't have the magnifier selected first. If I have the select mode, selected, because now it's going to refer to what I have selected, right? If I do it that way and hit the stitch locator button, now if I put in stitch number 1, it's going to be stitch number 1 for that object. And if I take my hands off the mouse and hit enter or OK, it goes right up there. And that's a lot easier to see than when we were trying to find that little red line when we did it up here. So now I can kind of see, it's there, and I can zoom in. And now that I know where it is, yeah, I can put in 1 through 5 up here and, hit enter or tab, and then you can see it really clear in red. And if I hit the points editing mode now from here, there they are. Those are the only ones selected, and I can go ahead and click on one. And you could see it's 5 to 6. Hold shift tab 4, 3, 2, 1, and now hit 1. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, and it jumps to your design, your underlay. So that's pretty nice. That's a good tie-on, and that's just really crazy about how this and this are affiliated with each other as far as the first stitch of your entire design. So I don't know, I could be wrong, but that's what it seems like. So anyways, so that's how you find your tie-ons and your tie-offs. And yes, let me go back to select mode. Thought I got rid of that. I might have, let's see. Oh, because I can't get rid of all of them, because I believe, isn't the rows part of it? Yeah. So let me separate that, and now I can delete those and bring back the blue. And so I really like that color, actually. It's so cute. But at any rate, even the rows, I see some stitches there. Ooh, a lot. So for that, I'm just going to assume, see, these are long though. So I'm going to go ahead and do insert, remove codes, remove all running, because these are running stitches, and remove all running and replace them with floating if the stitch is longer than, I don't know, I mean, let's see, from here to here, Let me cancel. Let me click on this. Forget what it's called. Freehand select. And my longest satin it's 7 mils. So we don't want to change those. So, but this is, you know, less than 7 mils, and so is this one, and so is this one. That's just crazy. So, I guess we'll just start with um, insert, remove codes. We'll start with remove them and replace with floating at say 7.5. Okay, so it got rid of all of them except for 2, and I'm going to leave that one. So you can see we have stitches and jumps and whatnot. And I can see tie-offs here. I can see a tie-off there. So there probably are tie-offs, but I bet they're not that great. This design was not digitized correctly because they could have ended this here and just went right into this one. You know, this one could have ended here and this one could have started here. So that's probably why it was free. So I'll just go ahead and I'll go into Stitches View and I'll go into Points Editing Mode, and I will just, oh, here's this one here. So you can see this one has to be made into a jump. That one, you can't really tell, but that one does, and this one. So there's 3 of them. Unless I somehow isolate these larger ones, these 2 larger ones, then I could just do it. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I can. Okay, perfect. Okay, so then we'll split before this one, and then we'll just separate this one. So then that one we can do, and this one we can separate. We'll just separate this item. Okay, so this one then, we'll just right click and insert remove codes, and we'll say, I don't know, 5, maybe it'll work. It didn't, so 5 wasn't enough. So I did undo. So there. Where does it go? Like there? That's 3.7. Ugh. I don't know where it ends. Let's see. Which one is this? This one. Since it's selected, I can hit on points editing mode. I can click there and then hit tab. So it does end right there. So where was it? It was like right at the beginning. So that's 3.6. So anything longer than say 3.5. D. Okay. All right, so right click, insert, remove codes. Remove them and replace them if they're greater than 3.5. Guess I should have measured it. And there it went. So there's a jump there. Now this one, that's those two. Okay, this one, I'll just do the same. Insert, remove codes. 3.5. And that one changed too. And the stitches all stayed good. So now I am going to just select them all and make sure I have tie-offs, just because, I don't know, I just don't trust this design. And so I have them all selected, and I'm just going to right click, and we're going to insert tie-offs. So insert tie-ons and tie-offs, we'll give it 4, and now I feel better. It might look like a mess here, but oh well, at least it won't come unraveled. I better stitch this out now after all this, right? Okay, so it looks better. I mean, I would have just taken this whole thing and redigitized each one of these shapes. And I can do that. I can do it very easily as it is now and just create a contour around each one of these. But you can't do a contour when you have more than one item, like for instance this one. So you have to separate all these items. Otherwise, when you do a contour, they'll overlap each other. Well, these may not, because we're not expanding it, but I still would right click, separate item, make sure every item, this one, separate item, and then there's so many there, whoops, right click, separate all items. The design is so small. So, and then with them all selected, so there it is. So I'll save it. I would have them all selected, and I would go to insert, effect, and we'll go with contour. Sometimes plate makes it smoother if you do plate first and then do contour, but we're just going to see, and we're not going to inflate it. In fact, this is so intricate. Booly. We probably should give it a negative inflate. And also, since it is so intricate and curvy, this whole technique with effect is probably not going to be good enough. But we'll just try it. And I'll just try the contour first, just so you could see the difference between that and the plate. Once we do it. So I'll ignore the cavity because each one of these is its own separate object. And so we just want the outline. So we will ignore the cavity and we'll click OK. I am going to give it a really small stitch length because sometimes if you do that, it just adheres better. Sometimes it doesn't look good at all, especially if you want it to, say, not follow something bumpy and you're stitching it way out here, you know, with quite a big inflate, and you just want it smooth, then yeah, you might want a bigger stitch length, but I'm going to just try it at like 0.5 just to get it to really adhere, and I'll just see. Okay, so here's all our contours. I'm going to hide, whoops, not that one. I mean, it's okay to hide that one, but it's all the roses that I really want to hide. So let me hold my shift. I'll join them, and then I'll just hide the pink so I can see what we made. I mean, it's not bad. You know, it's just we're going to have to do a lot of editing if we take this into studio. And so we might as well just trace over the satin if we used this. Um, and I gather even if we did give it a negative inflate, which I will try that. So let me ungroup them and undo this. Now they're still grouped again, which is nice. And let me go to insert effect. I can try a negative inflate. I'll just try like a negative 0.5 because this is very small. It's not even an inch. It's 20 mils in width. 25 is an inch. So if I go with much more of a, you know, if I try to deflate it anymore, it won't register. I've tried it. So I'll just try and do it with a negative 0.5, so a half a mil. And, you know, we'll ignore the cavity. And try it. And I'll keep the stitch length small, although, I don't know, it might have muddied it up a little bit, so I know you shouldn't change two variables. You should only change one variable at a time, but I'm just going to for the sake of time. I just have a feeling this isn't going to work anyways, so we'll have to just bring it into Studio and trace the nodes, snap to, and all that good stuff. So it'll probably take, you know, just as long. Okay, so it probably didn't register real great. So let me hold shift, select them, join them, hide them. Yeah. So that's not good, obviously. And even if we did the plate's not going to be good either because I've tried it off camera. And obviously let me just undo. Let me just join these. You know, and you can't do insert effect cavity because that's only for like an enclosed outline, like how we did with the blue flowers or with the blue hearts up at the top. We use the cavity because, you know, it was an enclosed outline that had a cavity. So, our best bet really is two things I would do or I would try. I would just right click on the rose and I would say edit stitch file in Studio, or oh, it's going into Studio, or I would take a screenshot of the rose and Control A. Here we are in Studio. You could see that they're manual stitches. Bring them into view. And, you know, these are stitch points. If we clicked on any one to edit, these are actual stitch points. So it's as if we're in Editor. And Studio calls them manual stitches. Studio has manual stitches. Here's the manual stitches tool. So you can make manual stitches if you just want to plunk, 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 you know, your stitch points. So, but at any rate, so this is the way, you know, they come in. And so we can trace over this. If I Control A, If I want to see it, just like I saw it in Studio or in Editor, I would just generate up here, generate stitches, go into 3D. So there it is, it's the exact same thing. And if I go back into vector view, I mean, to get this beautiful look with this beautiful spacing between it, you know, you're better off just snapping to the nodes. And when I'm saying nodes this time, I don't mean vector nodes. Even though we're in Studio, if I say click on the one, and even if I just hit edit, I'm not tracing yet, but even if I just hit edit, you know, these are nodes, but they're, even though they look like the vector nodes of Studio, they're stitch points. So they're nodes that represent a stitch point. And they actually look different. You know, they got like a little dot in them. Maybe that symbolizes the needle penetration. So that's kind of cool. But let me X out. So we're going to snap to those nodes. And we're going to try to make it as nice as we can. So let's decide how we want to travel. That could be the first one. And that could be the second one. We can end here on the first one, start here on this one. We probably want to start here, so we probably want this one to be next. So it's down here. Let me think. No, it's not really close enough. This one, this one, this one. Yeah, we'll have to do this one. So we'll right click, hold our mouse down, and we're going to put it after this one. So we got that one, that one. This one will probably start right about here. So this one will end there, this one will start there. And then we'll go to boy, they looked so much closer when they were being stitched. So we'll go, I guess, to this one. Insert after. And then this one. Insert after. So we're on number 5, 6, 7, and 8. So the first one, I've decided I'm going to start it here, and I'm just going to trace all around this object. So I'm going to create a whole new fill. I just go to my fill object, and remember, a fill can be an auto column, and that's what we're going to make it. I could just click it now if I wanted. But we're going to start it right about there. I'm going to zoom in. But before I start clicking, I'm actually going to, I can choose to snap to nodes. These little stitch points are actually nodes. You can always snap to nodes of any previously laid down object. And yes, this is like a vector object, but it's a manual stitch vector object in Studio. So we can still snap to these stitch points, and or I can snap to object edges, which gives me a little more leeway of making things smoother. So I'll just show you the difference. So I'll start with snap to nodes, and I'll place my first one there, and then I'll snap it right on that node. Okay, so I'm going to start there, and I'll just snap there, and then that one I'll kind of snap. So, and this can go very quickly. and I'm coming on a curve here, so I'm going to snap here and kind of snap there. I'm going to let that curve. So they're basically just snapping to the nodes. And, you know, since there's a curve, I'm going to come over here and snap. Since there's a curve, I'm going to stop here and then go here and snap. And you can see, you know, that can go very quickly. If I snap to object edges, you do have a little bit more leeway, but still the object edges of a manual stitch file are the nodes. Like, you know, it's not going to snap in here anywhere. These are the edges. So it's half a dozen one or the other when you're snapping to a manual stitch file as such as this. So it doesn't even matter which one I choose. So, and so you can get this pretty precise. And then I'll just, whoops. And then I'll just close edges. That might not look so great. So if I don't want that to snap, actually it's trying to snap to this node up here. So I can just uncheck it if I want to make it smoother. I don't know. I don't really know how that object went. And now I'm unsnapping, so nothing is snapping, but that looks better. I don't know. So, mind you, I'm not snapping to anything, but that's okay. And if you can't make this smooth, you can temporarily place my start and my end point somewhere else. And then you can kind of, well, let me snap. You can try and, I don't know, make that better. Maybe I won't snap just to make this smooth. Then it's not as close. So, whoops. Okay, so let me edit and then place start point here. These are going to be connectors, so it doesn't matter. I can place them both in the same spot. It's fine. And it's always better to put it interior anyways. So that's done. Just hit enter. And we'll save this to design, save as before we get any further. See, I already did it a couple times. Where's my, oh, there we go. Rows, I'll just call it rows 2. And so then I'll just hit another outline. So I'm going to start here on this one, and I'll try to just go quickly. I'm not snapping. And this one does seem to have somewhat of a curve, and that's what I wanted to try to make sure that I captured. And that's really hard to capture if you're just, you know, and you can see there I really don't want to snap because I won't be able to make it nice. And then I'll start snapping again. I'll just come way over here. And that should be fine, maybe. Snap that. Stop here and snap that. Here's a curve, so I'll come way over here. And it looks like it wants to come to a point, because roses kind of do that here and there. So close edges. And now I want it to end right here. That's a good spot, I guess. I could actually get it to be tucked in a little more. No, I think I will have it end here. I think it'll look more natural. So I'll right click, place fill endpoint here. Enter. So that one's done. And so that's our third one there. So I'll click my fill. And I want it to start kind of like right there. And I'm snapping to the nodes. So it doesn't matter which way I go. So I'll try to zoom in a little just so you could see. That's fine. So I'll click there and snap. I'm going to see if I can make one whole curve. That's fine. I'll click on there. I wonder what would happen if I just don't want to lose any of the integrity of the design. I mean, you do kind of lose that a little bit, but I could always unsnap it and bring this down just a hair. And snap it back up again. This wants to snap to this node down here. So if you zoom in, you can get more control. So I'm going to just come way over here. Where do I want to snap? I'll just do that. And I'll just right click close edges. And that looks fine. I actually, even though I started here, I actually, to save time, because a lot of times that doesn't look nice if you start there, you know, like I did down here, I had to temporarily put it on another node. I could have just started down here at this point and just to make sure that this looks smooth, and then come and say, place start point here, and then where was my end point going? It was this one. Then this one, I believe. So I could make it end. I could actually, if you click on a node, you can see it's going in this direction. And if I want to, you know, add a node here, I could either click here and insert, and it'll add a round node, but then click again just to get my square node where I want it. It just saves time. So then place fill endpoint there. I can delete these just so I don't have a lot of nodes, but they were actually fine. So, and that's good. So I'll hit enter, just make sure I had the order right. Oh, I did, I had it wrong. So, so this isn't my endpoint edit. It was over here. Probably making the wrong decisions. Place fill endpoint here. And so then this one will start it there. So I'll click here. And I can just start it there because, you know, it's on an endpoint. And I'll just kind of go to here and let it snap. That's fine. Click there. I'll make that one kind of pointed. I'll snap to that node. I'll curve all the way around and see. I mean, it's not bad. Might be better. Maybe not. So I might have had it better the first time when I did that. Because it's going to this one anyways. This space doesn't matter. It's not really snapping here too much. And I'll just go like that and right click, close edges. I'm going to make it a little bit of a curve, then it'll be closer to that one. I'm going to see how this stitches. So, oh, but I had it. Well, you know what? I can see, I'm so zoomed in and this is so small. If I clicked insert, I get a square node and I'll just make that my start point. It might have been a mistake to have this closer, but I'll just leave it. And then it looks like this is going to be my next one. So I will just, I'll make this my end point. It might actually look better though if I had it in the center. A lot of times that does look more natural. So if you wanted to do that, I'd right click insert to get a square node and then place fill endpoint there. And then save. And then this one, like I said, you know, I wanted to start there, but since I'm just going to follow this curve from here to here, I'm just going to go like that, and I'll do my start and end points in a minute. Not crazy about that. So I'm going to see if I can get some sort of a curve going here. Close edges. I'll let that go like that. I don't know. You zoom in, I could do it so it's not snapping or uncheck it. Either way. So now I'll just click insert, insert. I'm really more just hovering. And then on this one, insert, and now it's square. Place start point there. And I guess I'll just let it end there. And then I'll save. And then next one. Same thing. I wanted to start right here, but I'm not going to do that. Not yet, at least. This one makes a bit of a curviness. I'm going to try to keep the integrity of it somewhat. I could put my nodes closer together to do so. That one's not snapping to anything. Close edges. There's nothing for that one to snap to, but that's okay. I don't know if I want to make it come up more. No, I kind of don't. Okay, so this will be my start point because this one ended here. You can see the red dot. And then this one, we'll just, since there's already a node here, we'll have it end there and hit enter. So now we'll do this one, and I'll click on the fill, and you know, I'm going to start up here, but because of this shape is so interesting, I'm going to just start it down here, and I'm snapping to, and I'm going to try to follow some of the cuteness of this. This here, I don't feel like I like it, so I'm going to kind of, I don't know, maybe I'll unsnap here. And I actually made this already with a regular column because I wanted to try it both ways to see how it would look. And I actually brought it up like this to be a little more, I don't know, conforming. And I just left that, I think. And I'll just come down here now. And I actually think I'm going to go like this, even to conform to this a little more. Now I did forget to make my start and end points on this object. Now it's going that way. I almost like it better that way. So let's set these all, set identical parameters. You know, it almost looks more natural now. It doesn't look like a big crazy thing in here that was some misshapen object. This one looks a little misshapen now, but I can actually edit that a little bit. I almost feel like it needs to be more pointed on the end. I'm not sure, but, and maybe it was, I don't know. Not sure how I feel about that one. I'm not really good. I don't have a really good, that's the wrong one. That was the manual. I don't have a really good flair for art, as you can tell. I try, but I mean that kind of looks a little more natural, I think. So I'm just going to kind of go with that. And we'll just move on to the very last one then. I'll go back into vector view. And so this one is ending up here. And you know, you can always hit on your little fill stitch, and then if you don't know where this one is ending, you can press the number 3 on your keyboard and it'll pop right to the ending node. Granted, that's not where we're going to start our object because we're going to make connections when we're all done. I could make a connection now. So if I click on a connection and it popped right to my last point as well, I'd go there is where I want to start it. Let me start snapping again. Maybe not there, but maybe like there. And, you know, I would just hit enter and there would be my connection stitch. That identical color. But like I said, if I was just gonna do those all at the end and I was just using the fill for right now and I didn't know where to start it, I could just hit the number 3. Not on my keypad, but on the keyboard that goes across the top of your, I'm sorry, the numbers that go across the top of your keyboard. The number 3 there is the one that works for mine. But at any rate, so I would start my fill somewhere around there, you know. And, but like I said, with me, since I'm going around a curve here, I'm going to start it here and then change it when I'm done. Actually, I probably could have left it, but that's okay. So, and I have a curve here. This is a big mountain there. I'm going to have my start point, I think it was in a little bit right there. Place start point here. And I'm actually, I don't want to end it up here where it's ending. I could choose this spot or here. So this might be too close to the point. So I'm just going to close it, choose it here, fill endpoint. And so set identical color, set identical parameters. And so now I have all my start and end points correct, I think. And so I just select all of these objects except for the very first one. Right click, create connection. And so now all my connections should be small. There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. It's not real small. And I could give it a stitch length. So there's no other connections. So I could go select connections, all connections, go to the parameters. I guess that's fine. The smaller they are, the more they'll get buried in the fabric. 0.5 is kind of small, but this is a small design as well. So let's just see how it looks. I usually go to 4.5, and I'm going to try the PC at 0.1. Okay. I like it. I do like it. Let me hide these. I mean, it's fine. And I have the minimum length for my connections to be 0.5. Let me hide that. So, I mean, I think it's really pretty. Really pretty. And and so you can see they're all going to stitch without any jumps or anything. There will be a tie off at the beginning and there will be a tie off at the end because it's going to be its own object, and all objects in Embird tie off at the end. So let me just right click and group it. It's pretty. So I can zoom in and see my connections. I don't want to make it any smaller than 0.5. That's fine. A lot of times I like to sink a stitch point in between, but this is so small. Even if I did go in and do select connections, all connections, and if I, because say I wanted to sink a stitch point here, right here, I could make the max length 0.8 and see if that gives me another stitch point. It did not. Now it did at 0.5. But I mean, that's small, that your needle is only, 1 mil. So it's going to really cause issues, I think. So I would just leave them at the max. Um, I guess you could go 1.5. I would just leave it because this is so small. It was 1.7 is the default max. But so this is my rose. Um, I'm going to go with it like that. I do like it. So before I bring it into editor, I just want to make sure all my parameters are correct. So I'm actually going to just click on one of them. Usually that's the easiest. Go to parameters. I have my PC at 0.2, my density at 4. That's the default. And then I'm going to select all the rest of them. It doesn't matter if the connections are selected. Hold my right mouse, let go, set identical parameters, and then generate. Just to make sure they're all the same. Now when I control A and hit parameters, you could tell nothing is grayed out. The only thing is I don't seem to have these checked. I do really, even though it's really tiny, I mean, it's only a satin. I do want some sort of stabilization under it. Let me hit apply. Zigzag end edge. And let me go into vector view and see there's my underlay. And I do like the fact that I have some. Here, these are too skinny to have an edge. They should just have a center line because this edge is making it have two center lines. So these are okay. There's an edge on this one. There's an edge here and there's an edge here. But these, I'm going to just change to center line. So let's see. So it wasn't that one. It was these small ones. And this one. So we'll go into parameters and I'll give them just actually, whoops, they probably are small enough to just go with a center line. I mean, they're really small. If I click on the measure and like this one, that's only 1.5 mils. I mean, a needle is 1 mil. So these should really just have center lines. And you can see this one has a travel stitch. And so does this, they all do actually. So they do have a double center line anyways. So let's just see what happens. Escape. Excuse me. If I select them again, go into parameters and take off and have no underlay. So these two still are double, but these have nothing. So if I do auto, so it just puts the center line in for auto. So I'll just leave those at auto. And then I'll click save. And then I'll go ahead and compile and bring it into editor. So I'm going to make that one blue, the good one. And then when you align this, like I want this one to move, generally it's weird. I think you have to have them separated because if you just have them together and you would think that the bottom one's going to move and you hit align, centers, centers. Okay. Oh, it did move this time. Sometimes it doesn't, and I don't know why. But maybe it's just a fluke, or maybe I don't know. So, but it did work, and so we'll delete that one, and I'll just turn this one pink again. So there it is. It's so beautiful.